Good evening. Today is Wednesday, June 26th. This is a meeting of the Revere City Council's Ways and Means Subcommittee. This is the last meeting that we'll be having on the FY14 budget. I do want to acknowledge the members of the committee who are in attendance. We have Councilor Haz, myself, and Councilor Powers. We also have in attendance Councilors Correggio, Councilors Penta, Reardon, and Zambuto. Tonight we have 3 items on the agenda. First, we'll have the Planning and Community Development budget. I'd also like to take up the Elder Affairs budget, and then we will go into our discussion and recommendations for the full body. So I will start off with Planning and Community Development. I know Frank is in the audience. Frank, come on up. I'm giving department heads a few minutes to speak about any changes in their budget, talk generally about what's going on, and then I'll open it up to committee members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our budget is, as you know, predominantly funded through federal and state grants. The only salaries funded through the city budget is my salary as city planner, the planning board member's salary, Conservation Commission member's salary, and we also include traffic commission within our budget. One change is that engineering has now been taken out of my budget and has been out of community development budget and has its own budget of engineering, and that totals, including educational incentive and sick leave, $74,096. So that brings our total budget up to $267,439. And on page 43 is a breakdown of all the various positions in the Department of Planning and Community Development. And you'll note on the right-hand side, those salaries in parentheses are all grants. And what you see next to that is actually coming out of the city budget. For instance, the city planner is shown at $65,821, and project engineer is $36,000. The rest is planning board members, longevity, and educational incentives in our work study program.
Thanks, Frank. Any committee members have any questions? Councilor Haz.
Frank, I noticed that when the city engineer was in your department, he was making $50,700. Now we formed an engineering department within community development. He's making $67,006. So yes. Why did he get, $11,000 raise? When
the engineer was hired, he was told that at the time we could only afford to pay him $50,000, and he was promised after his first year of performance, his salary would be increased to $67,000, so this reflects that.
Okay. Thank you. And one other question, as far as the grants, both from the federal government and from the state, do you have a list of all the grants that you people receive in community development?
Yes.
Can you forward it to me, please?
Okay.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Councilor Haz. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Frank, so looking at this budget, other than the situation regarding the city engineer, your salary account, when I say your salary, I should say the department salary account, including all of the educational incentives, sick leave, buyback, longevity, etc., has only increased $47,000, and that includes the percentile raises going back to 12.
Yes.
And also the opening of the Friday.
That's correct.
So there's nothing really extra in here.
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'll open it up to other members of the council who have questions. No. Councilor Zambuto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions on the budget. It's pretty much the same budget. It hasn't changed. I just want to give Frank a little encouragement that we appreciate all he does and everybody in that department, the hard work you put in with limited resources. So thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. Councilor Penta.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Frank. Frank, I probably know the answer, so I'm going to ask you because I'm not sure. The 26th step, does that mean you've been here for 26 years, basically?
That's correct, yes.
That's all that means, is the
Yes.
top five say 26, 26, 26. Yeah, I mean, I got no problems with your budget. Just want to, say you're doing a good job, keep it up, and that's about it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Penta. Councilor Correggio.
I really don't have any questions. I know Frank is doing an excellent job for the city. It's a pretty lean budget. There's really nothing to address in that budget. So basically, keep everything the same and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Correggio. I don't have too many questions about your budget, Frank. I know a lot of it is funded through grants. One thing that kind of sticks out is the salary rate for the city planner is $98,000, but the budget and the department recommendation was $98,000. Is that is a $33,000 the difference in what you get paid in grants?
Yes, what you see on the right, my salary out of the budget is $65,821, and I am paid $32,263 out of grants.
From grant, okay. All right.
Good.
And just so councilors know, we did, and we'll take this up a little bit later, but we did receive a communication from the mayor relative to breaking out the engineering department, and there's another piece of cleaning up with the inspectional services department that we'll take up as a separate item as an amendment to the budget. Frank, thank you for your work. You've done a lot of good work for the city, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
What page?
Next up, I'd like to ask the Director of Finance to come up on the Elder Affairs budget. I know I had gotten a call earlier this week that Al Morelli was in the hospital, unfortunately, and I know the council extends their prayers to him, but I do want to go over the budget, and I don't know if anyone else would be able to. So their budget is on page 122.
Well, the one change that I'd like everybody to notice is the fact that has been put in Assistant Director, Senior Center, and that salary is only for 6 months at that level. The reason for that is because the director has, Mr. Morelli has given us his, he actually said to us that in January he will retire. So rather than have him leave and then somebody try to pick up the program, so that the seniors are serviced in a continuous manner without any type of break in the service, we implanted in there a Assistant Director Senior Center, and which will be appointed by the mayor, and that salary is only for the 6-month period, so it's a half salary. So that'll start July 1st and end on about January 1st. All the programs that we presently have with the Senior Center or the Council on Elder Affairs have been remained intact. Nothing's been cut or changed. In fact, that as I said, everything's remained intact. So it remains a commitment to all the seniors that we do not want to cut their services, and we will provide them as much service as we can for the money that we have, and make sure they have a continuous and there's no break in their service or whatever benefits they receive from the Council on Elderly Affairs. Okay.
Thank you, George. Any councilors have a question? Councilor has.
Thank you. With Al retiring, I guess, 12/31 of this current year, it was brought to my attention that we have hired, we're interviewed a fellow that I like quite a bit, But it's funny, I found out about it the other night, sitting here, not knowing Al's condition. Al's in the hospital, and we're already interviewing for his replacement, which brings up a question. What does the new replacement person get? Salary?
The new replacement person will receive a rate lower than what Al has shown here. I don't have a salary schedule on me.
Right.
But it'd be less, 5% less than that amount because Al is at the 26-year step.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
basically, he come in 78, if I'm not mistaken, in that general area,
Right.
with
I
George,
think,
correct?
yeah, he came in 70, I think he came in
Right.
80, but yes.
He's done a great job, but the question what happens when someone retires at a higher salary after 26 years, getting the contract through the unions, et cetera, the 2%, all right?
Right.
I'm wondering what the new person would start at.
The new person would start at, well, that 70,000 is comprised of the 2% increase,
Right.
well, the 4% increase because it went back to July 1st, 2012. And so the new person would get that amount. But if you reduce that by 5%, which is about 3,500, that's what the new person will get.
So he will be coming in about 67,000?
About 67,000.
All right, and it took Al 26 years to make 70,000, correct?
That's correct.
All right. The
But
other thing,
that's the way the
ordinance reads,
reads.
yeah,
Okay.
it's unfair for someone that's really worked 26 years for the city of Revere. But again, if that's what the contract indicates, so be it. The other thing, do you know about his car? The city council's been trying to address that vehicle for many, many years.
What about his car, Counselor?
Will the new person, also get a car?
The new person will also get the car, yes.
Why hasn't the city seal been put on the car?
The city seal put on the car?
Yeah.
I have no idea,
I mean,
but
we've addressed this many times, it goes in deaf ears. So with the mayor in attendance, will you take care of that, sir?
would you like the city?
I
Yeah,
know that's, you know,
let me just write that down.
yeah, all city vehicles should have the city seal on it,
I'm agreeing with you on that.
you know,
I am.
yeah, no matter who. Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Has. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. George, I just have one question, and I know years ago when somebody came to work for the city, I know, as was the case of myself, under George Colella, whatever your base salary was, I believe for the first year you were paid 90% of that?
That's correct. Then 95 the second year, and then
95 the
100%.
second, is that still?
I came under that myself when I came in.
Okay.
Once we brought the unions in, that was all
That
negotiated out.
Okay, that negated that. Okay, thank you very much. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. I'd like to acknowledge that Councilor Janino has also joined us. I will ask Councilor Correggio if he has any questions. Councilor Correggio.
Thank you, Chairman Arrigo. I'll be brief. I got no problem with the budget. The only problem I have is the senior van has been brought to me to a lot of seniors. It breaks down. It needs and repairs. Is there any way that we can look into purchasing a new van for transportation for seniors?
Well, what we did, the senior van did break down and needed some serious work, some $3,500 worth of work. The mayor immediately gave permission for the work to be done, took time for the work to be done. There was engine work that needed to be done. The van itself is in pretty good shape, not 100%, but we are going to be looking for some sort of grant money from some source in order to get a new van, and also make certain that the van is always on a particular schedule, so it doesn't rely on just one person just driving it, and if that person's sick, it doesn't happen. We want to make it much more reliable for the senior citizens in the community.
Well, I thank you very much. It's really important because I know it was out of service for a few weeks, and seniors had no way of transportation. So we want to make sure our seniors get the services that they deserve.
Right.
And whatever we can do to accommodate them in any way.
And the administration's in agreement with that,
Right.
and that's their policy. It's just that at that time, the it was quite a bit of serious. In fact, I think the engine needed to be replaced. And what would happen when it was up at, I forget the name of the Ford place, they had to get us a figure on exactly how much it was going to cost, and the mayor immediately called. Once we had a figure, once we identified the money to have it fixed and put it back in service, and that was on a Friday and was back in service by the Monday afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Correggio. Councilor Penta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I said before, I was glad to see the mayor, the two positions down at the youth center and also here, because, let's face it, you can never do enough for kids and you can never do enough for senior citizens. And I understand there's someone in this position now, but unfortunately, like you said, he's sick, this and that. And Councilor Hass made a good point. I mean, the guy, it took him 26 years to make $70,000. So I think the mayor in good faith told me to keep him on until January, which I think is a good thing, because the guy's worked 37 years here, not 26. He actually maxed out at 26 years on longevity. And that's why he gets that extra $3,500 or $5,000, whatever it is. But seeing that said, I mean, basically, if you cut it, he could put the person in a position by laying off Mr. Morelli's the department head. He has that right, even with the city contract, after 13 months. So I would think if anybody had any concerns about Mr. Morelli, they wouldn't make this cut. And second of all, if he had any sympathy for senior citizens, you'd probably want the most down here. I wouldn't mind even putting 2 people down there. They need as much help as they can get, and go beyond what they've been doing every year. Increase the senior citizens' activities and stuff like that. They got a building that we bought from, unfortunately, years ago is the best they could do.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure, hopefully, we can do something better for them. But I think looking at the elderly affairs account and the youth, I'm glad to see the mayor did that, and it's one cut that I could not stand the cut, so I'll stand by that. Thank you, Mr. One other question I do have, George. The longevity, 26 steps. That's when you max out.
What happens with 26 steps? That was negotiated. Every city union has that. Every city union has that 26-year steps, and that's when you max out. You actually get that amount of monies, and when you reach the end of your 25th year. So that's, other than the normal raises, that's when you max out at that point.
So if you have 37 years like I was, you don't get any extra money. You just get that after 26.
You just get that at 26, and that's it.
That's negotiated in the union?
That's negotiated by the unions. That's Al's in the A unit, and that's negotiated by that unit. B and C have, B has the same. The police and the fire also have the same.
And the council also has longevity, but we're not in the union, right?
Council has longevity, yes.
We're not in the union, though.
No, you're not in the union.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Penta. Any other Councilor Zambuto?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard some rumors that some people were interested in cutting this new position at the senior center, and I think that would be an unfortunate move to make. First of all, the new person that the mayor has hired happens to be someone of what I consider top shelf caliber, and that will certainly do a wonderful job down there. And I think that the mayor, in good faith, is trying to be very diplomatic about this and leave Mr. Morelli in the position because he's done such a job for so many years and is such a good person. But to bring someone in cold after he retires is foolhardy. It's the best possible scenarios for them to work side by side for the 6-month period or whatever, if 5 months or whatever it is, so that all the kinks that would normally be in there with the new person coming in, and to get a start on the advances that we hope to make for our seniors down there. We hope to do a lot, and I know the mayor's vision for that senior center is to do a lot more than we're doing there now. And I just want to make my pitch to the committee that I believe that this is one area that we should back the mayor on if we care about senior citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Chairman, just very briefly, because I have heard some conversation about, bringing on this new position ultimately to hopefully serve as our new Elder Affairs Director. I mean, everything that's been said so far is true. We've been told informally, I don't have anything in writing, but informally been told that Mr. Morelli wants to retire at the end of this year. And so for training purposes, because, Mr. Morelli has told me there's an awful lot of paperwork involved and, and it's a one-man department. He's got nobody else to fall on. As you know, Maureen Souza retired several months back, so there's a relatively new person in her position. So there's really nobody there that certainly has the institutional knowledge that Mr. Morelli has. Point that I'm standing at the podium right now is to say that this position is not presenting a new department head as of yet. Mr. Morelli is still the department head down there. Unless, of course, whatever happens with the budget happens, then naturally, I would introduce to you Mr. Fielding, Steve Fielding, who was slated to fill that position. But right now, he's the equivalent of hiring somebody, for example, as an employee down in the water department. I mean, he would, yes, I'm adding a position, but I'm not adding a department head here. If it was a department head, I would be up before the council to say, this is my appointment for Elder Affairs, but that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is, yes, I'm adding a 6-month employee down, or I'm looking to add a 6-month employee down at Elder Services, but I'm looking so that he's got a good handle on what happens when Mr. Morelli, after 37 years, leaves. It's hard to replace that. So that's the reason that he's in the budget. This is not going to be in the budget next year when you see it. This happens to be a once in 37-year time that we thought it would be prudent to put it in. So I just wanted to clarify that, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other councilors have any? Council Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard a statement made about some councilors looking to cut out that position. And I want to go on record as saying I haven't heard that statement, and that was not anything that I recommended. As a matter of fact, I believe this committee last night, not only with regard to that position, but to beef up the recreation department for the kids of this city, we increased the position down there. So I just want to make that perfectly clear to anybody that may be watching this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Powers. I think the comment is in respect to my hesitation for any new positions, because I've made it pretty clear from the beginning that if we're going to use reserves to help fund the operating budget, I don't think that we should be adding positions to the budget. That being said, there are some positions that are either maybe temporary, they may be actual promotions for people. The positions that were listed as new in the budget were not. Some of them were not, and that I think speaks to maybe some glitches with the new budget program and right. Having to implement that. What I will say is that I know Mr. Fielding. I actually got to work with him on Mayor Rizzo's transition team. We had a transition work group that focused on IT, and he was an asset to that group, and it was a pleasure to work with him. I've known him for now a couple of years, and this is not my concerns and my hesitation are not directed at anybody individually. It's not about the people who are taking these positions. It's about the fact that good budget practice and good practice financially is to not use reserves. And if we're going to use reserves, we wouldn't add to the bottom line of employees. Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, when I first came here last week, I know you're referring to the $2.8 million that we had in free cash.
Yep.
that, as you know, was put into stabilization because we needed to, right?
Yep.
You know, it was always our intention, given, you know, the financial circumstances, that we were going to use some of that $2.8 million. The state uses its stabilization fund to meet their budget. The city of Revere, many of you sitting on the council voted to use stabilization fund money in 2011, in 2009. So this is not a brand new practice. You know, it helps us get through and maintain city services for people. I mean, if it's the desire at the end of the day to not go into reserves, I'm going to be cutting positions. And I'm going to be cut, you know, and then you have the whoever's up here at that point. I don't know if it'll be police, fire, whoever. And then we can explain why, because we just want to leave $5 million sitting in an account for whatever, I don't know what, streets and sidewalks or whatever, but that is going to be the ultimate. I don't look at it. First of all, it started off as free cash. And the only reason it's in stabilization is because we needed to put it somewhere. So, you know, if I'm using bad budget practices, then the state is also using bad budget practices
absolutely,
also.
Absolutely.
So everyone's going to be using bad budget practices by using stabilization. I disagree with that. I think you do set money aside to help offset. You know, this is not going to be recurring costs. This is to meet this year's budget only. And you know, I don't think it's a secret to anybody sitting here. A lot could drastically change for our city coming up over the next 12 months. So, you know, I mean, like, what really troubles me the most, in all honesty, is the fact that I feel that $2.8 million would really, if I knew the budget would be before June 30th, that we would absolutely have a budget, I wouldn't have done anything with it. But I just didn't want to risk losing the $2.8 million. It's the only reason I even put that before a vote with you. There's no doubt I'm going to be coming to you without, I mean, unless you're going to cut $1 million out of the budget, I'm going to be coming to you to use some of those funds. And it's not unprecedented. Because, as I say, in our own city, we've used it twice in the last 4 years. I mean, you know, that's you know, because we did a good job last year, I don't think the council should penalize us this year because we need some of it to offset some shortfalls and, in the meantime, provide some better services for our residents. If that's the direction the council wants to go, I'll have to make whatever cuts I need to, but then there's going to be consequences to that. So that's all that I want to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Giannino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that there are some comments in this subcommittee meeting that be taken kind of out of proportion. I don't think anyone is talking about wanting to make cuts that are going to hurt our seniors or hurt our kids or lose police and fire. That's not what we're here to talk about, and that's not what we're here to do. I think that there were some miscommunications in some of the things in the budget because it was very labeled black or white, yes or no. And some of the positions that are technically new aren't new. So I don't think that we're talking about losing people or adding people. We're more concerned about clarification. And I think that now that we've had so much time to talk to you and Mr. Anzoni and work through this, we have a better idea of what positions are in fact new and what are promotions for people that have been working for the city for years that really deserve them. So I'm not so much concerned about that as some of the other comments that have been made. Obviously, everyone in this council wants the best for our kids. We want the best for our police department, our fire department, and our senior citizens. That's a no-brainer. That's what we're here to do. That's why you elected us to work for you. But I just think it's where money's being placed and how we're using it and when we're using it. And I don't think any of these comments are saying that we're going to be that haste to, nope, we're not using that money, or nope, you know, because you voted for this, we're going to lose a police officer now. Like, that's not what we're talking about. And I don't want people at home to watch this and say, oh, well, the council's going to vote on this, so now we're going to lose police officers and firefighters, because that's not what it's about. And we're not here to do that. And we want to see what's best for you, Mr. Mayor, because you've put a lot of time and effort into this budget, and what's best for us in the council to represent our residents that we're here to represent. So I just want to clarify a couple of those points because I feel like it's been a little bit confusing in terms of some of the language for these positions. So a lot of these things aren't new. They're things that are long overdue for people that well deserve them, and they're simple training procedures. If you have a person who's been doing a job for 20 years, their predecessor is going to need a great deal of training in that job because they're running an entire department by themselves. So that's something that's well-deserved and necessary to keep such a wonderful department like our senior citizens department up and running and offering those amazing services to our seniors. So as long as that's all clarified, thank you for being here.
No, Counselor, thank you. And those comments, I appreciate those comments. They're absolutely spot on. And, I think the thing that, one of the things that just really gets me is this whole thing with the, we know that we're going to have to balance this budget using some of our reserves. And that's, quite honestly, why I think those reserves are there when for when you need them. We're very, the first motion I made as a city councilor was to create a stabilization fund. We didn't have one at that time, but we created one, and now we've got it up to about $5 million. Actually, a little more? A little over $5 million right now, which, quite honestly, I'm not even satisfied with that. I'd like to have, ideally, I'd love to have maybe 10% of our budget in there for stabilization. That's my ultimate goal. But, right now, we're trying, there's always, and I don't mean to be redundant, and I'm not trying to tie your meeting up here, but, you try to balance services to our residents and what we can afford, what we think we can afford. If I put up, positions that drained our stabilization fund, you'd say, what, is there something wrong with you? Why would you do such a thing? These are positions that, I feel as though that we have justified. At the end of the day, you have to justify them, but I feel as though that between myself and our department heads have justified to you reasons why we need these positions or why we should have these positions if they in fact are new. Like you alluded to, Councilor, a lot of them are not new. They're just in different places right now and things like that. One is temporary. So, there's a lot of shifting around in terms of, like within the police department, you've got some uniformed officers that are going to be replaced by administrative people, outside people, which they've long wanted that, The fire chief never had for years, they cut an assistant out. He never had an assistant. That's crazy. And so when you want documentation or I want documentation, it takes a long time. Well, I can't blame the chief for that. He doesn't have an assistant. You couldn't find another chief in the state of Massachusetts that doesn't have an assistant. So, I'm trying to weigh the services to our residents and our workforce with what we can afford. We all know that this coming year is a it's a big year for the city of Revere. A lot can happen between now and the end of this fiscal year, and a lot of it, has to do with Suffolk Downs. What's the future of Suffolk Downs? And if it doesn't find its way to Suffolk Downs, okay, well, we'll work on what we have for new growth, and we'll continue to promote the city the way we have. If things do work out at Suffolk Downs, we're going to be talking about a whole different ball game next year at this time. So, I don't think it's unreasonable to take a little bit out of stabilization to balance this year's budget, looking forward to what could happen this year. And not only that, as George Anzoni told you, we've got $740,000 that we just recovered during an auction through tax title that'll be going to our bottom line this year in free cash. So it looks like another strong year in free cash. So, I don't think we're really, we're not really talking about a policy that's going to put the city in a poor fiscal position. So, but I appreciate your comments, Councilor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Janino. Councilor Hess.
Thank you. I had a question to the Mayor. Mr. Mayor, what are we actually utilizing out of the stabilization fund for the 14 budget?
Okay, right now, because the state budget isn't set, it's
Right.
hard for me to say exactly. It looks right now, Councilor Hess, that it looks like we'll be asking for close to $1 million. Maybe George can clarify that a little.
Here's 2 points. One is the state hasn't given us a final cherry sheet number because they haven't passed it. That's number one. Number 2 is that we've asked the Public Employees Committee to allow us to use a part of the reserve that they have a premium holiday. So a premium holiday would save us about $1 million. However, if they give us for a month, it'll be about $1.2 million. However, whether or not that room is in the premium holiday is numbers are being gone over now. It may be only a 3-week holiday, which would give us about $900,000. Well, if we got the $1.2 million, the same thing has to happen that happened last year. However, the school front-ended it in their Schedule 19. If we have a premium holiday, what has to happen is an estimated $700,000 would have to go on to back into the school budget. So we'd have to raise the school budget, have them revote their Schedule 19, give them $700,000 of that money. We'd end up with only $500,000, and then there'd be the difference between the $500,000 and what we have to raise. So that may not be the way to go. I would say an outside shot, $1.5 million, $1.6 million, somewhere around there. That would be the number that we need. And as I was telling the mayor earlier, today I set up a meeting with Moody's Investor Service on Monday at 11 o'clock because the city is selling some vans, and they require, since the city hasn't gone back to them in vans for a while, they're requiring a rating call on Monday morning at 11 o'clock. So hopefully we have our budget set, so I can tell Moody's on Monday, our budget's set, we have what we need to do, we're ready to go forward into 2014, and have them look at that. And yes, we'll tell them that we're using stabilization funds if that's the case. Rather than tell them, I would not like to tell them, I have to tell them, or the mayor would not like to tell them, that we have to cut back all this monies, because if we have to do that at that point, they're going to be saying, okay, now where are you cutting? So they'll be looking at that in a negative figure. But again, as the mayor, to reiterate what some of the points the mayor reiterated, in 2009, actually since 2009, every budget since 2009 has used some reserves to balance the budget. In 2009, it was a overlay reserve. In 2011, it was a stabilization fund for $1.2 million. And there were other reserves that were used in 2010, in 2012, and 2013, some being the reserves for the rent-a-car surcharge, the reserves for the school buildings that we had. So there was always an amount of reserves that came in and had to balance this budget. So in looking at that, we have to look to it. If you track our free cash, or excuse me, our stabilization fund over the years, this is the highest the stabilization fund has been, is $5 million. I don't remember it ever being that high. We had an excellent year this year because we had 2.8, and the driving force behind a high, besides a good budget, which is set by both the mayor and the city council, good budgeting procedures. Not only that, but also the high amount of delinquent tax collections, because that's money that goes into this, the year it's collected. So that was very high last year. In fact, to say how close it was, the free cash this year was 2.8, and the amount of taxes that were collected, delinquent taxes were collected, was somewhere in the $3 million area. So that's the way these formulas work. But I just want to bring you up to date in saying that if we bring it down $1.5 million, we'll be at 3.5, which is higher than we originally started at because it was down. We added 2.8 million to it this year. Well, so
at least
we'll have a net.
Yeah, to continue, at least we have money in the stabilization fund to meet these critical needs,
right,
without question. In using this money, which I'd like to say is free cash, even though it's in stabilization, right, those funds should be used for one-time emergencies, such as, a school roof or something that comes up unexpected, all right? To use it the way we're using it right now is basically, for instance, the firemen, the grant, the 10
right,
individuals. We're going to have that deficit next year also, right?
But we'll also have the ability to go up 2.5% again.
Well, that's why I brought
right
up the cap.
Right.
That's why I brought up when you were here, Mr. Mayor, an override. Okay, this city will never go for an override.
We're not even thinking of an override.
No way, okay?
I wouldn't ask you for an override.
Right.
Well, what do we have plans right now? We have the litigation with the police department, right? We all know what that dollar magnitude may be. We're not sure. They're still negotiating. What's this I read in the paper today? You're going to be moving your office up here. Will that be coming out of stabilization funds, or is that grant?
Right now, we haven't even got prices yet. So we're just looking, we're actually looking what the prices will be.
Yeah.
So once we know that, then we'll see where we're at with respect to, you know, tax receipts and where we're at with respect to new growth and all that stuff. But we certainly, you know, that's just another piece of the puzzle. I mean, making these public investments. You guys voted in the new McKinley School. We voted this whole new school program. I mean, it's it's an awful lot of money, but it's an investment back into our public buildings, which we have to do. I mean, you know, it's the same thing with your house. Sometimes you need a roof on your house. Sometimes you need to, you know, upgrade for the sake of, you know, the continuity and the usability. So, but as far as that goes, that's not part of the budget discussion. I mean, you know, when the time comes, I would come before the council and say, listen, this is how much this costs, this is the upgrade, this is where I'm going to get the money. Right. And, you know, at that point, you could vote on that. But that's not part of the whole, that's not part of the budget discussion right now.
No, but I believe the free cash should be used for one-time expenditures. Going into the stabilization fund maybe should be itemized in there. This should be for, like the chief indicated, his apparatuses are getting old. He needs new ones. All right, that's the discussion that you and him will have at the appropriate time. All right, but again, we're fortunate we have the money in the stabilization fund to address these current needs, which will be ongoing. Just hopefully, George will bring in more stabilization funds with the collection of taxes as he's done in the past.
Well, like I say, we have another 700 some odd thousand that I know right off the bat is going to go to our bottom line this year.
Right.
And we don't even know what else after that. So we could have another strong year. We just don't know that yet. But bottom line is, like George just said, even if we had to go to that maximum, 1.5 or 1.6, there's still 1.2 that's going in there from last year that's going to stay in stabilization. So, and again, we'll know a lot more this year. I mean, like I say, this is a unique year for the city of Revere because there's a lot that could happen that would potentially be very, very good for the city of Revere financially. But we just don't know yet. So, but this will carry us through another fiscal year, and then this will be a conversation we'll have next year to see where we're at. You know, it might be a totally different conversation because we won't be worried about going into stabilization. It'll be how much money do you want to put into stabilization? Right. That is hopefully where I want to go with the conversation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hess. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, first of all, I want to applaud you for your vision creating the stabilization fund, which I also voted, and I'm sure many of my colleagues did. I think that was a great thing because subsequently we had even mid-year cuts. And when you have a mid-year cut, you know, you really have a problem. It's not just a cut in local aid. It's a cut in local aid after you've spent half the local aid.
The 9C
okay?
cuts.
And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Anzoni, George, I believe we normally put 15% of that money into the stabilization account every year. I think we voted on that. Okay?
That's the city ordinance, right?
And I share Councilor Rigo's concerns also, that you know, to just go out and spend that money now on things that maybe you may feel unnecessary, the council may feel are unnecessary. I said, you know, there's a question here. But getting away from that, I also feel that we're going to be buying 2 new fire apparatus. That's my understanding. According to the chief, he says he needs them. That's public safety, and if it's something he needs for public safety, he should have it. He's probably one of the most brilliant chiefs in the Commonwealth. He runs a very effective and efficient department over there. But again, if we're going to buy 2 pieces of fire apparatus, rather than go out and bond them and pay maybe an extra $200,000 to $300,000 in debt service to purchase these, free cash, in my opinion, is one time. You know, I mean, you use some of it in your stabilization fund. That's money we've already put there, fine. But I think the The 2 million plus we've just put in there, if you're going to buy fire apparatus, use some of that money to do it.
We won't have firefighters to drive the apparatus if your decision is not to allow money to come out of the stabilization fund. It's just not going to be a reality.
That's not what I said my decision was. You've got $5 million in the stabilization fund. You're certainly not going to spend $5 million balancing your budget.
I would love to do that. I mean, there are needs. Donnie Goodwin has come to me. He's looking for stuff down there. The chief still hasn't approached me. I don't know. I wasn't here for the subcommittee meeting. He hasn't told me he needs 2 pieces of apparatus. And as far as I know, the city has never not bonded to go out for equipment. We've never paid cash for any equipment we've ever bought.
That's just my opinion. I think it's a prudent way to do business. I mean, if you're going to put a roof on your house and you got $100,000 sitting in a savings account, you don't go and borrow the money from the bank. You put the roof on.
Councilor, if I could just, let me just, so just so I know where you're coming from, because maybe we're on 2 different conversations then. My first thought was just to get money to balance the budget. If you're talking from the balance of stabilization, what's left, if we need equipment and you want, separate and apart from the budget conversation, but how, if we have to buy equipment rather than bond, take it out of stabilization, I'm absolutely willing to have that conversation.
Well, that's exactly what I'm referencing. That's exactly what I'm referencing.
My apologies then. I thought we were talking about...
I know you're going to have to use money from the stabilization account to balance your budget. I understand that.
Okay.
But you're certainly not going to use $5 million plus. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're going to buy apparatus, and if I believe the chief has even mentioned that up here before this council, that at some point he's going to have to replace 2 pumps.
Okay, see, we haven't even had that discussion yet. So he might have said that in subcommittee, but if
he did say it.
So if that's the case, depending upon the amount, and if the council wants to approve money out of the stabilization to pay for it up front, I would be more than willing to talk about that.
I would certainly support that because I think it's the prudent way to go.
Okay.
Can I just intervene on that just for 1 second? 2 things. One, yes, free cash is used for one-time expenditures. What I would recommend, where we are going down to 3.5 million, may be going down to 3.5 million, depending on that. Free cash comes out usually, and we know our free cash figures sometime by December. So if we have to, what I'm recommending is maybe use next year's free cash to fund the fire equipment. However, the other part of it too is, I was here when the chief mentioned at the meeting about his new equipment, and I also made a comment at that time, through city stat, we're going through 3 departments, DPW, police, and fire. One of the issues that we are taking up and looking at is what they are going to need for capital improvements. And once we get those capital improvements, such as fire equipment, various police equipment, and equipment down Public Works, once we get that together, then we can set a plan on exactly how to fund them or when to purchase them and how urgent is the need. I'm not saying his is an urgent, we're not making that decision tonight, but that's a process that's being followed now. So, and I understand your want, which is a great want for additional fire apparatus, but the process the chief needs to follow is the process so that the administration is informed, because that was the first time I heard that he needed equipment also, is that he has to go through the process now that we're setting up in our city stat, which regulates the way monies are spent. Yeah. So once he does that, then we can come with a plan to the city council and say to them, okay, we'll show you the plan. We'll show you here's what Public Works needs, here's what the police need, here's what DPW needs, and maybe even what some City Hall people need, but as far as technology. And then at least we have a plan in front of us. But my recommendation would be, it looks like we're going to have a healthy free cash next year, and especially where we had an auction that $735,000 went to the bottom line this year. So looking at that, I would recommend maybe the best position is let's get this all done, and as we're doing it, by that time the free cash number will be certified by the state, and then we can take another look at it and a hard look, and we'll have all the numbers in place at that time. You know,
I would hope so, because again, it doesn't make sense to me to pay debt service if you have money that you can use.
Right.
That's just my opinion. You may disagree with me. The mayor may disagree with me, but that's my opinion. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. Councilor Reardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to make a few observations. First of all, let me say up front that with some reservations, I'm prepared to vote for this budget as it stands before me. I agree that the mayor has justified a $7 million increase. But that begs the question, where do you stop justification? You could have easily justified another 5 firefighters or another 5 police officers, and that would be justified. So it's just not a question of justification. The other observation I would like to make is that just because, and I think Chairman Arrigo alluded to it, just because, you know, we did this in 2009 and did this in 2011, and the state can do it anytime they want, doesn't make it right. First of all, the state can virtually print money. $5 billion in new $500 million in new taxes that they're proposing right now tells you that they can print it. We can't do that. We don't have that luxury. We're a completely different situation from the state. As to spending money from reserves, the reserves were created for emergencies. If something goes wrong, if it hits the fan, what are we going to do? And I understand what you're saying. Well, we have needs right now. Why would we hold $5 million in a stabilization fund when we have needs now? And that's again, an equally strong argument for spending reserves. But I think most presciently at this point is the fact that, as Your Honor suggests, we may be on the verge of something completely new and completely unheard of in this city's history. What I'm suggesting to you is that a couple of things. First of all, that maybe we should suggest something else that's completely new and unheard of, and that is not expecting to increase our tax levy by 2.5% to the taxpayers each and every year of the value. Maybe we ought to think about, if we are fortunate enough to get this casino and the mitigation package, to maybe reconsider that position, because it seems to me that we almost take that for granted at this point. And the other suggestion I would make is to reconfigure the ordinance so that we have a minimum amount of reserves for emergencies such as a bad winter, such as a lawsuit that we can't deal with, such as any number of natural or otherwise financial disasters that we could face. And then only allow a drawdown from that, not for budgetary purposes, but for such emergencies. And the other thing, as far as free cash is concerned, I would suggest is we should consider using it, as my colleagues have suggested, for one-time type purchases, fire apparatus, etc. But what we ought to consider doing is putting those decisions over to the end of the budget stream, to the end of the budget year, so we know that even if we do have to use some reserves or something like that, that we have the future budgetary period to rebuild that and make some sacrifices somewhere else and deal with it that way, rather than start to make rash decisions before we know what the future is going to bring. And those would be my only recommendations. And I think that the people of the city really deserve to get some form of a break if we are able to be lucky and take advantage of our natural resource down the beach, and also of the potential for economic development at Suffolk Downs and elsewhere for that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Reardon. Councilor Penta.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Reardon hits on some good points. The only thing I want to say, I'm not sure what we're even talking about up here. I haven't heard a cut yet. I know tonight they're going to make cuts, whatever, but the stabilization fund, and to be fair to the mayor, and I want to echo Council Powers saying that I was on the council when you fought very hard for the stabilization fund. We wouldn't be talking about this tonight, $5 million in there. But I'm not sure if it was 2 weeks ago at our last council meeting, you stood up here to transfer $2.8 million of free cash, basically as a tool to do things with down the road. Now, we only had $2.2 million in the stabilization fund. We went from this year $2.2 million to $5 million. Knowing, and the mayor stated, knowing that he was going to have to use some of that money. So out of the $5 million he's using $1 million, you still have $4 million. And the other thing, it's a good reason to send it in there, and you mentioned it on Monday if you're meeting the bond people, whatever, the bond rating has a lot to do with how much you have in your stabilization fund. But our services in this city, and I've been on the council since I started 20 years ago, at all-time low, from DPW to police, almost every department. How much lower can you go? So is it raining as far as services to the taxpayers? As far as I'm concerned, it's raining. All right? Because you can't, if you cut the services, you have two options. You cut services, which could be fire and police, which, you know, like you said, police is at its all-time low.
Right.
I think when Council Hass was in, it was 130 officers, 137. They got 78. To run the same size city with another 15,000 people in it, you know, it just doesn't work, the numbers. So to cut public safety, it would be extraordinary. Not to use a stabilization fund, there's two ways. You either cut services or you raise taxes on people. And we all agree we're not going to go up to over 2.5. So it would probably come down to 99% would be cut to cut people. And it would reach public safety. So I'm not, our city, believe it or not, is in pretty good financial shape compared to a lot of other cities in this Commonwealth. And it's to credit to people like yourself. I mean, the mayor's been a year and a half. I mean, he's got the stabilization fund up there. Now, it's almost like he's getting penalized for having that much free cash because how he watched every department and made them accountable and everything else. And with the city stat and everything else, even going further, hoping to save, like you said, you already have 700,000 next year, maybe we'll have 3 million next year. But I mean, to cut the few cuts, I don't see it. It's a $165 million budget. $1 million cut to that is what? 0.5%?
Yeah.
You know, so my thing is, I'm not for cutting any service. The people of Revere deserve more service than they get. And unfortunately, hopefully down the road, Councilor Reardon said none of us have a crystal ball. Hopefully things come to fruition, the beach. And put the track aside, Gamble, because we don't know if it's coming.
Right.
Wish we did. But without it, we still have a lot in the forefront. The beach development starting to go up. You know, some good development going around the city. So our tax base will be more broader next year. But, I mean, I don't know what we're arguing about because if basically it was said and basically known that you threw the free cash knowing you were going to take the money. We voted to do it. But now I'm hearing fire trucks, this, that. I don't understand it. We voted, this council, 11-0, with your word, knowing, saying you're going to use some of the money. But right now, before I lose it, the city has doesn't want to jeopardize losing it. Let's park it over here. And you're still borrowing $1 million out of it. You're still putting $1.8 million in there. It's pretty good in my books. I wish you know, that's pretty good. But that's all I'm going to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Penta. Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to follow up what Councilor Reardon said. And he's absolutely correct. I mean, my goal, strange as it may seem maybe to some of you up here, is that my long-term goal is to stabilize or reduce taxes. I mean, that's without question. You know, and so, yes, certainly the prospects of a casino at Suffolk Downs would mean an awful lot, not only financially for the city to be able to take on capital projects that we might need, but also to helping stabilize not only property taxes, but also water rates. We haven't had a conversation about the casino in a long time, mostly because right now the city of Boston, it's all in their hands. We haven't signed off on a mitigation agreement yet. So, you know, once Boston can get themselves in a position where they've signed off, the city council will be the first body that I meet with to discuss the terms of the mitigation package and what's at stake for our city and what it's going to mean to the city with respect to everything that's included in it. And, you know, tax relief, like Councilor Reardon said and Councilor Penta just alluded to, is something we're all striving for. So, you know, but again, it's that balancing act that I've heard a couple councilors say. You want to provide services. I know Councilor Giannino was talking about public safety. Of course, we all want public safety. We got to pay for it, you know. So did I want to lay off those 10 firefighters? Did I, you know, we all agreed as a council to take on that SAFER grant a couple of years ago. at the time, quite honestly, I didn't know if the grant, I mean, you know, I was a city councilor. Is the grant going to expire at some point, not get renewed? Who knew? It didn't get renewed. I don't want to lay off 10 firefighters. I want to be able to keep them. And we made it work within the budget and, you know, with ways to, you know, what I felt was to pay for it. Councilor Penta used the word, and I think I used it that night, I need to park the money somewhere. And that was the most, you know, efficient place for me to put it, was in stabilization. So, you know, I know that, believe me, I sat up there, I've gone through budgets, I went through a dozen budgets up here as a councilor. I know that it's your job to provide fiscal oversight, and I respect that. But, you know, I consider this budget, in spite of some of the positions you may see, when you think about the services that we want to provide to our residents, I consider it as lean a budget as I could feel comfortable with in terms of providing those services that I think people really want and need. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. You know, hopefully the council will see that at the end of the day that this, you know, that this budget is, you know, it's not a budget I submitted to patronize anybody or to, you know, it's a budget that I put forward that I thought was fiscally responsible, and I think it's sustainable going into next year. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps I differ with some of my colleagues that I'm not as upset with taking money from the stabilization fund to balance the budget. Maybe it's because I think I was the first person that Councilor Rizzo, when he was a city councilor, came to and asked about putting forward this rainy day fund that the city never had. That's not because I was his favorite councilor. I sat next to him, I think. That probably was the reason. But the bottom line is, I think I was the first one he came to, and I thought it was a wonderful idea. And this city went through, I don't know how many years without that rainy day fund, and we've been stung really bad when we didn't have it, and we got mid-year cuts, and you know, there were some terrible times up here. So I think it's a luxury that we're able to talk about the prudent, whether it's good budget policy to go to a rainy day fund. That could be debated back and forth. It's done almost everywhere, federal, state, and it probably isn't great policy. But I remember the mayor up here not long ago saying he needed a place to park this free cash. And from hindsight, perhaps we should have parked it in a separate account, and maybe we wouldn't be quite as, you know, to me, it's semantics. We need to balance the budget, or we need to lay off the firefighters, or we need to make some cuts that none of us want to do. And I think Councilor Penta said, and Councilor, we're not providing the kind of service we want to provide right now. And hopefully we're going to get this casino, and it's going to change things. And I mean, I think the mayor is being conservative when he says drastically change things here. We won't recognize it. It'll be happy days because we'll be able, for the first time, I believe, to cut taxes and cut water rates. And I hope I'm here long enough to see that day, that we can actually cut water rates especially, but cut taxes and not be going up 2.5% each year. So I guess it's because I remember a time when we didn't have a rainy day fund up here and how bad that was, that I'm not as uncomfortable taking some money out of the rainy day fund to this one year. And I will say, I'm comfortable because I know this is not going to be standard practice. This is not going to be a regular thing where we're going to the stabilization fund to balance the budget. I think this is not a normal situation. It's been done a couple of times in the last several years, but I think if things get on the track, especially even without the casino, we've got some real great growth going on. We've got some economic development coming into this city that's going to change the base and raise more revenue. So less uncomfortable taking this one-time hit in the stabilization fund, that I'm glad we have a stabilization fund. So that's my point on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zambuto. I just want to make a couple of comments on all the statements that have been made. First, in looking at this budget, it really wasn't clear that we were using reserves initially. It wasn't, kind of clear cut.
Right.
So to get the budget a little bit late and then to kind of look at it and understand that there are reserves being used, made it more difficult for me, at least, looking at it and trying to kind of rectify whether or not we should be adding positions, however many positions, and cutting and using the stabilization fund. What I will say is that regardless of if it was free cash or stabilization money or if it was parked somewhere else, any type of reserve, and that's free cash, that's stabilization money, and it's pretty clear from, a Massachusetts Municipal Association, from Department of Revenue, from the Government and Finance Officers Association, using reserves in any way for your operating budget is not sustainable. So that's where I'm coming from, and I think of it in the aspect of a household budget. If you have to dip into your savings and go through life using your savings, you're not going to get too far. Right. Number one, and number two, if you're budgeting your house budget on, well, hopefully this will happen. Hopefully I'll get this job, and then I can spend this money. I don't think that's really prudent. I will say, as far as the free cash, the actual amount of 2.8, there are other studies out there that say your free cash should be about 3 to 5% of your budget. 2.8 is, I think, 1.8% of our budget. So as far as even a general practice, our free cash really should be up over $4 million a year. And that's not to say that having $2.8 million in free cash is great, but I think that the standards should be set a little bit higher. We should be able to bring in $4.5 million, and that's kind of a general practice in public budgeting. My other problem is that we've had a lot of discussion about the casino. And I think that budgeting based on something hopefully happening is not really the way to go. If anything, we should be thinking about our plan B if it doesn't happen, and how much in reserves are we going to need to maybe make up for some of the things that we're going to need to make up for. Because the McKinley School, in fiscal year 15, we're going to have a tight budget. And we're going to have to pay a lot of money for the McKinley School. Now, we approved that based on assumptions that there would be some extra new growth and some other things that would happen. If those things don't happen, we're going to be in a difficult position. So, I think at this point we have an uncertain future. I don't think that creating a structural deficit is really the way to go. And I think that in looking at the budget, and we've had an extensive amount of meetings over the last 2 weeks, I think, people have said, well, we're going to cut services. If we don't go into the stabilization fund, we're going to have to cut services. I think there's a happy medium. I think this might be a good segue into the conversation about potential cuts. I do have Councilor Guinasso's recommendations, but I want to start it off by saying that in looking at the budget, I kind of looked at it pretty cllosely. I think that there's a happy medium where if we know that we're going to get $700,000 plus in auction money, and I have a list that I can provide members with of some cuts that I think are not hitting police and fire, are not hitting any personnel. Keeping all the new positions, I think there are some places that we can look to and I can go over them as we go through, but I think that there's a happy medium where if we have the $700,000 in auction money,
Right.
and if approximately $500,000 in cuts, which, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to, I think, 0.3% of the budget.
Okay.
In non-personnel, non-service areas, I think we can get to a place where we can minimize the amount, hopefully to none, of the amount of stabilization money that's going to be used, and we can kind of work on being able to have as much free cash as we can, and work on hopefully being ready for a situation where if the casino doesn't happen, we have a strong stabilization fund,
Right.
we have a plan B, and we're able to kind of move forward. So with that, I'm going to open up Councilor Correggio.
Thank you, Chairman Arrigo. The first thing is I do support the mayor's recommendation with the stabilization fund. The money is there. I think we should do what we can. It's probably going to be a one-shot deal, so we want to satisfy the department, especially the fire department. As you well know, myself being on the fire department for over 32 years, those guys went for training in the academy for over 6 months. I don't want to see that go down the drain with the 10 firefighters. And as far as the apparatus, according to the NFPA, a fire apparatus should be replaced every 9 to 10 years. And I don't want to see any safety jeopardized with our firefighters due to mechanical breakdown, because apparatus now is running like a taxi cab. It's going to medical aids. There's all kinds of calls, mutual aid. So we should do what we can. We have the account there. Money's moved all the time from account to another. It's not that we're doing anything wrong. The thing is we want to keep the city in a running position, whether it's the police or the fire. So I would support the recommendation. But I have one question for George Anzoni. Tom Ambrosino left some money, I think $2 million when he left office. Did that go into some account?
$2 million, no, I don't know what,
He left he left about $2 million of
he left
free.
about $2.2 million of free cash.
Right.
Excuse me, in stabilization fund.
Right.
Right.
So that's in the stabilization
That's already in
fund?
the stabilization fund.
Okay.
Right.
And then the other thing is I do agree with most of the councilors. We brought in over $700,000 through the auction.
Right.
And the other thing is we got the market basket that's going to be opening up. They're going to be bringing in revenue.
Right.
And, God only knows how much new development, because development is on the wind now for the city. With John Festa working hard, trying to bring in all kinds of development. So I see a win-win for the city of Revere. But the bottom line is we want to keep these departments operating. I don't want to see any layoffs or any fire station closings or less police officers. So I think the city's in good shape. It's a matter of how we manage everything. And the mayor's in the office all day long, and he's working with department heads, and he's spending time seeing where money is being moved and analyzing, the city. So I don't have any problem with it. So I will support it. Thank you.
Okay. Can I just make one statement, because I've heard this thrown around? The $735,000 received from the auction is not something that can be appropriated with this budget. It's something that has to go to the bottom line, and then the state has to certify it as part of for use as part of the free cash next year. So the 735, I just want to make that clear.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Councilor Correggio. My first budget recommendation that we have is from Councilor Guanasso, who was unable to attend, but he did have a reduction in line item number 511900, which is the group health insurance that is under the Director of Finance's budget, and that cut is for $1 million. So what I'm gonna do is bring up these individually.
Can I talk on that?
Well,
Really?
you can speak on it. I don't think it's the appetite of the committee to actually make this cut, but
Okay.
we can speak on it if you'd like. I know. Yeah, very quickly if you'd like.
Quickly. Listen, for the record, don't do it. don't recommend it. You're going to have to reappropriate it. It's money that you have to put out there, so
Yep.
it's just not something that can be done.
Okay. So on that, I'm going to ask for a roll call on that reduction. Councilor Janino.
No.
Councilor Has. No. Councilor Powers.
No.
And I will vote no. So that is will not be done. That cut will not be made. The Councilor Guanasso also had proposed a couple of increases to the budget. I know that we can't make actual increases, but we can recommend them. So we'll take them up. My guess is that if the committee wants to take them up as a whole or individually, we can take them up as a whole and have recommendations to the mayor. And so the increases that he has are there's a $10,000 increase to the city solicitor budget for the salary of the city solicitor. There's a $1,600 increase to the police budget for 4 decibel meters at $400 each, and this is to enable the noise ordinance. And there's an increase of $800 to the inspectional services department for 2 decibel meters, again, at $400 each to enable the enforcement of the noise ordinance. I would, Mr. Mayor?
No,
okay. So, Councilor Janino.
Can you just review the noise ordinance ones again really quick? Because I'm just speaking with some of the police officers that handle this. It's not really feasible to have one of these in every car, or at one given time on one shift there's probably only 6 or 7 cars out at a time, so to buy 4 of them I think that's a little excessive because I feel like they won't be used, so maybe 1 or 2 would be a reasonable purchase to enforce the ordinance, but I don't think they'd even ever use 4 at a time, and they're sensitive items so you wouldn't want to have them traveling. Thank you.
Councilor, is there a motion, an amendment on the floor to change it to 2, to reduce the police number to 2?
Yes.
Okay. So we will change the number of, the amount in the police budget would go down to $800. It would be an increase of $800, and it would be for 2 decibel meters. On that, Councilor Has.
Yeah, also, solicitor's salary, we're increasing our solicitor to $10,000, requesting the mayor. Also, as I mentioned, I guess the paralegal in there just passed the bar, and I'm sure the mayor is aware of it, and I think there should be some compensation in there for her. Unless the mayor's going to go out and get someone new. See, it just happened.
Mr. Chairman, through you, she did pass the bar, which is fantastic.
Right.
But the only way that I could probably do that is a paralegal position.
Right.
And so, short of appointing her as an assistant solicitor or something like that, I'm not sure that I can just, arbitrarily raise her salary. I don't even know. Is she?
Well, what she does, she's in a paralegal status. She passed the bar, which isn't a prerequisite for holding her job, her position. There's nothing, something, I don't know if it can be negotiated with the union, but it has to be something that it can't be in back bargaining because she has the qualifications to do the paralegal job. The point is that for her to get some compensation with that, and any thought would be to have her become a 3rd city solicitor. So,
But that'll be up to the mayor's discretion.
That's
correct?
up to the mayor's discretion.
Okay. I just
So,
want to make sure
okay.
we were all aware of it.
Okay.
Okay. So you want to take a roll call on the 3 transfer?
Yeah,
Unless you
so
want to speak.
we'll take a roll call on the city solicitor increase, the police budget increase, and the inspectional services increase.
What was the inspectional services line item one more time?
There were 2 decibel meters at $800 for $800.
For inspectional services and for the police department?
2 for inspectional services and 2 for police. Yeah.
Roll call.
Roll call on that, on the recommendation of Councilor Guanasso. Councilor Janino.
Is this on all of the items?
On all of them, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor
Yes,
Has.
yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers.
Yes.
Yes, and I will vote yes. With Councilor Guinazzo's recommendations done, are there any other members of the committee who have recommendations to the committee? Councilor Haas.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what we've done during the last 6 days of budget deliberations, we've all voiced our opinions, consolidations, eliminations, adding to the budget. So when you see a bunch of requests coming in, it's from the individual, but it also listens to what the people in the committee had to say. You know, it's wide open process, etc.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. Any Councilor Powers?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have one question for the mayor. And, you know, it's a situation similar to the Recreation Department and similar to the senior elderly accounts. It's my understanding that the secretary for the licensing board will be retiring at the end of this month. Am I correct?
She's going to be retiring, I believe, September 30th.
Okay. September 30th. So you have a 3-month period in there, July, August, September. I would assume she's staying to train someone else in that position?
That would be my goal, but we haven't selected anybody for that position
I'm not even
yet.
going there, Mr. Mayor. I'm
Yep.
not even going there. That you're the mayor. That's you know, your responsibility to appoint someone there. But the question that comes to mind is, if she's going to be staying there, and somebody else is going to be coming in to be trained, where is that money coming from?
Well, right now, we haven't decided if we'll have maybe her go half-time prior to that, bring someone in half-time. I'm not sure. We're still discussing that. That's why I didn't add anything in the budget for that. You know, obviously, someone's going to need training up there, but we're not really sure how we're going to go about it. We do have the city solicitor's office that works very closely with Joan up in licensing. You know, she's also indicated that she'd be willing, you know, to help out, come in and help the new person along anyway, even after her retirement. So, you know, we've got
as you know, it does require a good amount of expertise. It's not a department where you can just put a junior clerk or a senior clerk into and expect them to, you know, perform that function. So that was my question. You know, how is it going to be handled? Will there be adequate compensation for her or for the person that's coming in there?
We haven't made that determination yet, which is why I didn't put anything into the budget. We're still, like I said, we're trying. Believe me, I mean, you know, that probably should have been something that maybe I could have added to, but I thought I could work it out and still think I can work it out with the money that's been budgeted there right now.
Okay,
so,
fine. You know.
So that's my goal anyway.
I just thought I'd bring it to the attention, and you know.
If you're willing to let me dip into stabilization a little more, I'd be happy to add somebody for another few months. So.
Well, let me know when you get ready to buy the fire engines.
You got a deal.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. With that said, I do want to address it doesn't look like any other members of the committee have any recommendations. The recommendations that I'm going to put forward, I will go through them one by one, and we can discuss or vote on. So I'm going to start off. I'll just name the department and then the description. I'll give you guys the page number also. In the finance department, we have the workers' comp unemployment. This was a line item that had gone up from $60,000 last year to $148,000 this year. My plan, Mr. Anzoni.
Why that amount was put in? I think I
We're on page 25. Right. Actually, if you go back one from 25, it's an unnumbered page.
I know what it is, yeah.
And this is relative to the individuals who would be retiring or potentially retiring at 65 who might get this.
Right.
correct? And this
That's
is
right.
new this year.
Right. Well, it's new for us this year, but. it's
New
been
for
going
us
on in
this year,
Commonwealth,
yeah.
right.
And it's not contractual,
Pardon me?
it's not contractual.
No, it's not
It's
contractual,
not-
but
okay.
the state of Massachusetts upholds it. When they took it to court, they upheld it in court.
Okay.
So
But
that's why we have to
don't,
put in.
we don't have any,
What?
any applications for this money
Right.
yet, correct?
Well, we have some people that are on
We
the
have-
board collecting it now.
We have people who are potential,
Right.
but we don't have people who have actually
Okay.
applied for this
Okay.
money. So my recommendation is to bring it back down to the FY13 amount, which is $60,000, which would be a savings of $88,000. So I will take these up. Councilor Paz, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Explain the ramifications of such a,
Well, what happens if you cut it back to 88,000, these people come in and excuse me, cut it to 60,000. Well, they're cutting a total of 88,000, aren't you?
Cutting 88.
We would be cutting $88,000.
88,000, right. So if you cut that amount of money, what happens is when these people do come in, I'm going to have a shortfall. So now either I'm going to have to find some available funds in the budget, if there's any, or we'll have a deficit in that account. And then I have to come to the city council either, if it's before we set the tax rate, for either a further appropriation or if I find for a transfer, so one or the other. But that's one of my hesitations, because I went through that quite in debt when I decided to put that number in the budget, because with those we have at least 3 or 4 of them on now, okay, that weren't on beginning of last year, and we have about 5 or 6 coming on board this year, and that's why I'm hesitant to do that. I didn't put that number in just to plug a number. What I did is I estimated it out and felt that that was the number that was needed so that we can comply with the Massachusetts general laws for the payment, because since we're self-insured, for the payment, full payment of the amount for workman's comp,
Thank you, George. And
unemployment.
I would just comment that on the idea of transferring money, that's a regular practice that we've gone through. And
If I had money
this
somewhere
committee
else.
just
Right.
approved a
Right.
number of transfers for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right, if we have money somewhere else,
So
that's the
there
thing.
there are, as you go through a budget, there
Right.
are places where we may save a little bit of money. If we,
may.
for instance, if we get the premium holiday, you're talking about, there's potential there for probably over $1 million.
Right.
If the union agrees to
Well-
a premium holiday. So
that
there's going to be,
depends.
there are places as you go through a budget, as you go through a fiscal
right,
year,
and I
you find places where you can make up. And I think that
understand.
in the vein of
But when I
that,
do come in for a transfer,
That-
if I do come in for a transfer, you have to remember this cut was made, and this is what I
that's
asked.
understandable. And I think
Okay.
the recommendations of the chair are such a insignificant amount in that they're only 500,000, like I said, 0.03% of the budget.
Right.
If 0.03% of the budget in items that that aren't going to affect services or personnel,
Okay.
that are kind of on the edge,
All right.
can prevent us from going into the stabilization account, I think that's a valiant effort to make. And I think that as we go through these, there are a few more that this is one thing that I think Councilor Powers actually alluded to, is that, small amounts of $80,000 here or there can add up and can end up saving,
Right.
us in the long run, especially going into the stabilization account. Councilor Hess, did you have a question? Oh. Okay. So on this, I will ask for a roll call. Councilor Janelle.
Yes.
Councilor Hess. Yes. Councilor Powers.
Yes.
Okay, and I will vote yes. So the next item that I have is, let's see, in the auditing department. Want to get which is page 35, and then go back one to the unnumbered page. The insurance line item, which has jumped from $550 last year to $690 this year, that is one that I think we can. My proposal is to actually drop this down to 600,000, which would still be a $50,000 increase over last year, and bring it, so we would be bringing it down to 600,000 and a savings of $90,000. Do any members have any questions? So page 35, and then go back one. Go like back one page to the unnumbered page. If you look, it's line item 570900. See city's insurance line item.
There's no questions, call the roll.
Councilor.
Before, just so you know, this is
Mr. Mayor.
yeah, this is what the policy, this is what the estimates are. This is what the premium is. Premiums, unfortunately, during, if it's a hard market, premiums do jump. So, I mean, this is something that's out of the city's control. This is,
Did we recently change agents?
No.
No.
No, we are in the process of changing agents, but we still have the same agent right now.
Okay.
And this premium has changed.
Okay.
So, just so you know, I mean, this will be something I'll be coming back to you on, or we'll have to drop insurance on certain public vehicles or public buildings. So I don't know what...
Well, this is still a $50,000 increase over last year, and
that's like
I can
saying,
understand. We can go back and forth on...
Mr. Chairman, but that's like saying you have a homeowner's policy for $1,000. Next year it goes to $1,300, but you want to pay $11. Well, the insurance company's telling you they want $13. There's not like an arbitration on it. They'll just say, okay, well then, if you don't want to pay it, then we're not going to insure you.
So I would gather that that there are a lot of insurance agencies that would be willing, especially in this economy, to take on the city's account at $600,000. And I don't know exactly.
Well,
but I would think that there's an opportunity.
Just to say it's a number, you have to look at what's actually being insured. Just to say it's 600, we pay 13, or we pay millions of dollars in health insurance to somebody with 40,000 employees. That's not a lot of money. To somebody with 1,000 employees, it is. So everything is relative. This is the cost to insure all the vehicles, the liability policies, public buildings. If you don't want to insure those, cut it down, and I'll either come before the council and see which buildings or vehicles you want to leave uninsured, or I'll have to come back for an additional appropriation. So whichever,
Or there could be a transfer of funds. At a certain point in the fiscal year, there could be a transfer of funds.
Well, you're talking about a significant transfer of funds there if we happen to have the same. See, when we have transfers, Councilor, and like I say, I've worked on a couple of these budgets. What happens is during the year, you never know what your experience is going to be in a lot of accounts.
Things change.
You're going to have, and that's why when you start talking about a budget is not a perfect document.
No.
We're still talking about, we don't know what we're going to get from the state yet. They're still negotiating their budget. So it makes it that much harder for us. That's why, but some numbers, when we know what the price is, we know what the premium is. In this case, we know what the premium is. But if the council wants to reduce it to what it was last year, we'll have to.
So
we'll have
was
to
there?
see where it goes.
And it wasn't. I mean, I asked this question during the our budget hearings, and there was not too much of an answer. But is there a significant reason why it's gone up $140,000?
Because there are not a lot of companies that insure municipalities. There is not a huge market for that. It's a specialty market that it will come out and insure municipalities, insure all the different liability policies that go with a municipality. So you're only talking about a handful of markets that are even interested in taking on a policy like this. So, when a market tightens up based on experience, if there's, if there's big claims against a group of municipalities in its totality, rates go up. And so that's beyond the city's control.
Oh, I can respect that. I just am, a little surprised because the amounts that the actuals have gone up were it went from 479,000 to 507 to 545. That seems like a steady kind of increase that you would expect in an insurance premium. To go up from 550 essentially even maybe 600,000 to 690 seems like a significant jump over what we've experienced in the last couple of years with actual numbers. So, and that is why I had put this forward as a potential area.
Okay, whatever you prefer.
Councilor Has.
I have a question here. If you're looking at the summary page there, FY13 actual to date, that's only through April. So if you take the 545,000 and add another 100,000, because it's roughly 50,000 per month, that brings it up to 645,000. So the increment increase is 50,000. You follow what I'm saying there?
And I think that is actually a good comment, because we budgeted it at 550, which was obviously not enough at the time, and we had found the money to fund that through the next 2 months. So my suggestion is that if we plug in a number of 550 in the past, last year, and it wasn't enough, 690 is a significant increase over that. If we had hit 600,000 in our fiscal year actual to date for fiscal year 13, we could keep it at 600 this year. And if there is a need for a transfer, we've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars in transfers over the last couple of years. I think we can get by. I will take a roll call on this. Councilor Giannino.
Yes.
Councilor Has.
Yes.
Councilor Powers.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. The next item I have, and they go kind of hand in hand, I'm going to take up the Department of Public Works rubbish collection and rubbish disposal. So again, if you go to page 88 and go back one to that recap sheet. Now these two items, we've had transfers in. I know I believe the disposal account. So if you go to page 88 and then come back one, the summary page. They are line items, let's see, 521-1400 and 521-1500. Those. Hit the button, George. The button, George.
Oh, the button. Oh, I didn't know what you were saying. Sorry. Yes, well, those were increased by the percentage of 6%. Each one of those at the recommendation of the people who are doing the contract, because, as you know, those are moving targets throughout the year, depending. So that's why those were increased by that amount.
And that's understandable. I think these kind of raise a red flag to me, because we had transferred money out of these accounts this fiscal year, and there was too much money appropriated last year, and they look like places that we could, and actually, in all honesty, we should be seeing a decrease in over year to year, because of the fact that more people with single stream recycling, more people are recycling, and we see this removal and disposal, these rubbish collection and disposal accounts going down, and they should be going down throughout. So my recommendations are to bring the rubbish collection line item to $2 million and the rubbish disposal line item to $1,500,000. I will open it up to council if they have any questions. No. Councilor Giannino.
So it's a $227,980.
Yes, 227,000.
980 decrease.
So after recently seeing our presentation from the Recycle Bank program, I think this is a fitting cut. We see that our city's recycling is increasing incrementally every year. So we can kind of foresee that if this is going to continue to happen, that we can see there will be less money needed in this fund. So I think that would be an appropriate cut, especially since recycling is going over so well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janino. I will take a roll call. Councilor Janino.
Yes.
Councilor Has. Councilor Powers.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. The next item I have is the DPW office supplies line item.
What page you
Oh, the same page.
Same page.
Same page. Line item number 540,000, 540,000.
Right.
This is one that you see a big jump of from $4,800 last fiscal year to $52,000. My recommendation, and I don't know if there are any other suggestions, but my recommendation is to bring it down to $10,000, which is still double what was budgeted last year.
No, office supplies? No, the price 52,600. That must be a, let me just look at that. That came, does that match the account on the inside? Does the summary match the detail of the account on the inside? Let me take a look at that. 1 second.
Yeah, page
I know what
98,
that was.
it does
I know what
match.
Oh, I know what that was. No. The reason for that is because they have a tracking system on a GIS tracking system on their vehicles. And my office was paying the amount. I took it out of my monies. It was being paid out of an account that I had in my office, but I don't have any longer. And what happened is it got transferred to the DPW. That's why there's that increase, so they can pay the maintenance on that GIS on all the vehicles. So if you reduce it, we don't pay the maintenance, we don't have GIS any longer on it.
So that was in your budget, George, previously?
It wasn't in my budget. It wasn't a budgeted item. There was an amount. It's a city fund actually that I oversee. And what happens is it's for computerization, and the monies from that account were being used, but there's no longer those monies, and because each year I had to pay this amount for the maintenance, so I said, listen, we have to appropriate it in the DPW because that's where it belongs, not in any account that I oversee. So we put the money in there for the maintenance of the GIS vehicle locators. So that at all times we can know when and where our vehicles are. And it's on every vehicle they have.
Councilor Janino.
So should that be put in field maintenance on office supplies?
We put that into office supplies because it was a maintenance account. We didn't have another account. We wanted to break it down, so we put it into office supplies so they could pay it out of there. It's not for, maybe it's a misnomer, but we could put it in a different account. But that's what that is. No, it wasn't an account in mind. It was monies that had come over, monies that I oversee for the city for computer purchases. Now that account's been depleted, and that's when I said I recommended to the superintendent that he puts it in his budget because I can no longer carry. I don't have any more money to pay for it, so he had to pay for it. But that's why it was put into office supplies, because it's an easy account for us to identify it in.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Powell.
Let me see if I get this straight. So, George, what you're saying is you had an extra $50,000 somewhere that you didn't need, or?
Do I have an extra $50,000?
I'm just asking the question because.
First of all,
$50,000
city government
is a lot of money.
$50,000 hanging around. Well, what happened was there was money that we had from a computer purchase years ago that I had been funding the maintenance of this out of, and finally, because if you remember, this was installed after the audit from the state of DPW. So we needed money to, and each year it goes up. Each year the maintenance goes up. So in order to make it come out of the DPW where it belongs, we put it in that account. I no longer have any money in the other account, so we put it in that account to make it appropriated.
So let me see if I've got this right now.
Right.
There was $50,000 in an account for computer purchases
It was-
that you didn't need or didn't, and could use for this particular
That I could use
item?
for this, right.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But I don't have it any longer.
I hope not.
Thank you, Council Howard. I do want to note that, George, your office supplies account actually increased and was up to over $70,000, so.
Well, one of the reasons that was is because we have aging air conditioning equipment in the office and heating equipment, especially in the computer room. And we're looking at maybe have to change the type of air conditioning we have so that we also have to maintain it. We really hadn't had a maintenance contract on these. It's not only the treasurer's office, the MIS department, the training room, the green room, I don't know what we call that, but the workroom and the treasurer's office itself. So all of those are included in that. So that's what we're looking, that's why it was such an increase. And if the computers go down and they get overheated, then we'll have a problem. What?
Council Howard.
Didn't we just do a major overhaul of the air conditioner?
We did an overhaul of the air conditioning in the treasurer's office, all right?
This current year?
This current year through a grant, a green grant from with Amoresco. Okay, we just did that.
That was part of the school
That was part
upgrade.
of the Amoresco portion of it. They had a green grant that was separate for cities, because I think they also did with the same grant, they did the rec center, okay, for the air conditioning in the rec center. Now, that's not the area I'm talking about. The area I'm talking about is the computer room itself. Computer rooms have specific air conditioners to them that have to be tremendously reliable, have to make certain that the heat doesn't build up on it, that it reacts that way automatically. They're more expensive than a normal air conditioning system, and that's what we're looking to accomplish here, to make certain that doesn't happen. We also had a system put in the new suite of offices that needs to be maintained. We didn't have a maintenance agreement on them, so now a maintenance agreement will be for all those offices, plus maybe the future installation of a computer room air conditioner.
Can you separate that account issue?
I can do that. Okay. Right, it's just that, yeah, if we paid it normally, that's what we paid out of it. It's office supplies in the way of materials. It should be materials, but that's how we did it. But I can break that out.
I'll roll call.
Yes.
Council has, yes.
What are you cutting here? Excuse me.
You're cutting the GIS?
You're cutting my account, or you're cutting the GIS system?
This is the office supply account for DPW.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, if you cut that, and I can't pay the maintenance on that, the city can't pay the maintenance on that, we have to stop the GIS on the trucks. Once they break down, there's no maintenance, we have nobody to call, we'd have to pay that. So we have to maintain it, we have to maintain, also there's a software maintenance in that.
Do we have somebody working on the GIS system full-time in the city?
Donnie
No, no.
uses it quite a bit.
No, we don't have.
But do we have a GIS, like a GIS person?
No, you're talking about the GIS and a different GIS. You're talking about this is
Not mapping.
excuse me, it's GPS. I
Oh,
used the
okay.
wrong
All right.
analogy. It's the
Okay.
I was
GPS.
calling it GIS.
No, it's the GPS
So
on
this
the
is
trucks.
GPS.
Global positioning.
Okay.
And censoring, which is what
Okay.
we have on that. The GIS, we have a person, which we get out of a grant, one person who comes here once a week from CDM and Camp Dresser McKee, and they handle all of our GIS upgrades. So that person specifically comes in who's an expert, and has been very helpful in a lot of ways, not only with the police implementation of their, and fire implementation of their new CAD recommended software, but also to Public Works and community development and engineering.
Okay, Councilor Giannino.
Thank you. I may be being nitpicky on this, but it's not an office supply, so maybe we can separate $50,000 as to being maintenance on the vehicles, because it's not an
On the
office expense.
GPS?
Yes, because I feel like if you would just add it to office supplies, that can be used for anything. But if you're saying this is $50,000 for maintenance for this service, it's just another line item and it's a little more organized. So maybe we can, instead of doing a cut, separate it.
I can separate that out.
Mr. Chairman, point of information
Councilor
is, I feel strongly that, we need to be able to track our vehicles out there, but is this going to be a reoccurring $50,000?
Every year.
Every year?
Every year.
Is
It's an
that a
expensive
maintenance
system.
contract, or is that something that we
That's a maintenance contract, and that's a software upgrade. So every year every time we buy both. We buy the maintenance contract on the equipment, and we buy a software upgrade, so if they increase their abilities for the GPS system, then they would be able,
This
immediately
covers
get
all
advantage
of our DPW vehicles?
Pardon me?
This covers all of our
All DPW vehicles, even the backhoes, all of them have it installed.
Now, let me ask you a question. Does this cover any private contractors that are brought in a snow emergency, a system we can track them also?
No, it doesn't, but it'd be expensive to do that, but there is an avenue that we are looking into on the city stat, so that when we have a snow emergency and we call in outside contractors, we'd get a device, and it may be as simple as a cell phone, because they all have GPS on them, and get them a device and hand them out the device so that we can track them where they are at all times.
Yeah, because I get calls, and not all the time, but sometimes you get a call and somebody will say, well, my street wasn't plowed,
Right.
or the contractor left or something like that. And I'd like to be able to give my constituents, a reasonable answer as to why something like that happened. Maybe it broke down, or there are reasons, but sometimes...
I'm only smiling because there's a story in the city of Boston where one of the snow plows got it, threw it in his lunch bag, and threw it in the snow, and he thought they weren't going to be able to read it. Well, they read it, and it never moved. So they went and they found the GPS, and they eventually found him, and he said, "How did you catch me?" He said, "We found the GPS." So,
Mr. Chairman,
That
point of information.
I'm gonna withdraw this recommendation from the chair. Okay. So we'll move on. My next recommendation is the streetlight account, which is 520400. Again, this is an account that I believe we had transferred money out of because we've come under budget the last couple of years. You can see we haven't gotten up to $600,000 each year. So my recommendation is to reduce this down to $600,000 and even $600,000, which is less than what we've spent in the last 3 fiscal years. I know with fiscal year 13 to date, we've probably come close to 600, but my sense in our conversation with the opportunity to potentially buy streetlights, we could be saving even more money, I think, in this account. So I'm going to move to reduce that and
can I just comment on this?
Yep.
Not for or against. I just want to comment on this, is that I said at the DPW budget hearing that there's an ongoing project headed by myself at the appointment of the mayor, that we are looking into the feasibility of actually buying our streetlights.
Yeah, or I would wholeheartedly push for that, because I do know there's a big push for the energy companies, or the light companies want to get rid of their lights, and they're willing to sell them off for $1. And due to the to the aging of the infrastructure, they get it off their books. The city can end up ultimately saving a lot of money by taking over the lights, being able to manage which lights are needed, being able to actually use LED or newer light technology that will save money down the road. And you end up having a vendor. You can have a vendor that may be able to get out quicker than the light company can to fix the light. So you pay somebody $80,000 or $90,000 a year on a contract to go out, and they agree to fix the light within 24 hours of notification, and that ends up being a little bit quicker than a big light company. So I wholeheartedly agree with the idea of purchasing lights, and with that I will ask for a roll call. Councilor
Can
Penta.
I just ask a question? Because you brought up a point that several years back we discussed buying the streetlights.
Right.
And the thing I got the answer back was the upfront cost is extraordinary. Now, I don't know if that's still the case or not.
Well, we're in the
So I don't know
process.
if it's wise to
Yeah.
cut this, to leave money in there to try to buy, at least start buying some of them. I mean, start somewhere, because I think if you bought every one in the city all up front, I mean, I don't know what the cost would be. That probably have to bond it. There's got to be a great cost. Do you have any, George, any idea what it would cost the city to?
We don't have that figure. We're working on it
The
now.
Mayor Ambasino told me the upfront cost was extraordinary to do it. That's
And-
the only thing I'm saying.
Council Penta, on that point, the light companies have been more willing to sell their lights, and if Councilor Mayor Ambasino had was looking at it a couple of years ago, because of the fact that the infrastructure is aging, that price goes way down. And when I was working in Somerville, we had brokered a deal for $1 for the lights. They're now talking about 75 cents or 50 cents a light. So
Do you know what the cost was in Somerville? I mean, we have a lot of lights in the city. I think we may have
the-
more in this city than
The-
every other
the-
city there
and
is.
we have a lot of lights, and the savings, between their light account and their DPW was about $750,000. They had seen a $600,000 savings over 1 year, and that was through, they bought the lights up front, and they were, I believe, $1.
$1 for each light. How many lights do we have? I don't know.
And they also did it in a pilot, and so they took a section, they actually mapped out the city and looked at where the lights are concentrated, where people ask for lights, and so what they do is find a neighborhood that has a lot of lights, and you buy them all.
The point
and you
is,
can-
you're agreeing with me 100%.
Yeah.
That-
Yep.
Let's start this process, start it, I mean, maybe use this money to start buying, maybe start in one ward or one area. Like you said, you gotta start somewhere. I think, just take the initial cost if you did it all at once. I mean, I don't know how much it would be, that's why I asked, but I'm just saying, just to make cuts that come back later. I mean,
But, I mean, ultimately, you'd be saving money, but this line item would probably go down to about maybe $100,000 for the contract that it would cost to actually have the lights maintained.
I agree with that.
So, yes, minus $84,000.
Minus $84,000.
Roll call, Councilor Janino.
Yes.
Councilor Has.
Yes.
Councilor Powers.
Yes.
And I will vote yes.
So is that a total of 477,580?
I have roughly 489.
I got 477,580,
Okay, so we have 88,000,
right?
we have 90,000,
Right?
we have 227,000,
Okay.
and then 84.
84, right? And I have, maybe I had it wrong, but I have 477,580.
Maybe
085,
my
479, 17, 1, 3 is 4, 470. 6, 8, 6 and 9 is 15.
Mr. Chairman, if you would,
so 489.
can we just read off the cuts?
Council Powers. So the cuts as they stand right now are the workers' comp unemployment line item in finance, which would be a savings of $98,000. The insurance line item in the auditing department, which would be a savings of $90,000. The rubbish collection line item, which would be a savings of $127,000. The rubbish disposal account, which would be a savings of $100,000. And the streetlight account, which would be a savings of $84,000. We've requested the mayor to pay for it. So, okay, so we're at 479, and my last item is the. Yeah. Okay. And finally, the line item for public building heat, which is line item number 520500. You can see over the last couple of years, we've spent an average of about probably about $60,000, $65,000. And this year, we're on track to spend maybe $70,000. My recommendation would be to cut that down to $80,000, which is still, I think, sufficient given the previous year's actual expenditures. And that would be a savings of $30,000. It'd be a savings of $30,000 from 110 to 80,000.
$507,580.
507,000. Yeah.
580, right. 580. The number before that was 477,580. And then you just added 30, so it's 507,580.
Yep. And again, and
Right.
so the idea behind these were that this doesn't hit police or fire, doesn't hit any of the new positions that have been created, keeps all of our services intact, but would hopefully keep us from dipping into stabilization fund. Now, I know that you said it could be as much as 1.6 that we're looking at.
That's correct.
And if that's the case, then we're going to have to go in. But I think if we go in for, 600,000, it's better than going in for 1.6. And and I know that, any budget is not a perfect document, but if we can reduce the amount of money that we try to take out of stabilization fund, and we can keep services intact, generally, I think that kind of makes sense. So, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to say that, most of the cuts I can probably live with. I mean, if it goes for some reason, for example, heat, depending upon...
If we get a cold winter,
we have a real cold
I understand that.
winter season, right?
Yep.
I mean, so that's going to potentially, fluctuate. The insurance, I suspect at some point I'm going to be back here to talk about that. But some of the other cuts, hopefully, based on the trends, hopefully they come out the way that the council is predicting, and maybe we didn't need to budget as high as we did. But, our goal is always not to have a shortfall in an account, and sometimes that's how we wind up with free cash at the end of the year that we can put into reserves or stabilization for future use, whether it's to buy, as Councilor Powers alluded to, firefighter apparatus, or, in my opinion, if you have a shortfall or one year the state decides that they don't want to give you as much as they have, we don't have to take the hit because we saved money, and we save money for a rainy day, so we can continue to maintain those services. So, so it could, in my opinion, be used to balance a budget. But be that as it may, most of these cuts, I think, are very livable, and so I think if that's the extent of the cuts, I think it was a good compromise. And
I would agree, and I appreciate the openness and the fact that you're saying that you're able to live with these cuts. I think they are livable cuts, and no budget is going to be perfect. And having worked on the state budget, having worked on local budgets in other cities, having worked on a budget for a state agency now, I realize that no budget is ever going to be perfect, and you have to live with what you get. And I think that there is one thing that people talk about, and it's kind of attempting to do more with less, right? And that's what I think everybody wants to do. And this is absolutely a lean budget. Again, these cuts represent only.
That was somebody's campaign slogan at one time, wasn't it? More or less.
Doing more with less?
Yeah, more or less. Is
I think that was Joe. That's Joe's slogan. But
is it?
Joe in Somerville,
I
yeah.
think some other local politicians use that. I think they do. Okay, there you go.
With that, I'm going to ask for a roll call on the public. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make one comment?
If
we take these numbers back, the cuts you're going to make, we're going to assume that the rest of the council go along with your cuts. I will then implant them into another pro forma.
Okay.
Okay, and then I'll resubmit you a pro forma, and then you'll have an idea of what, and I'll give you it without the pro forma without the PEC agreement with the premium holiday.
Yep.
And that'll be the amount of monies that you have to, that'll be the amount of monies the city would need in order to take out of the stabilization fund in order to balance the budget. Okay? My interest here is the fact that, one, I think the mayor has to write a letter to request the city council itself to appropriate that money towards the budget. And if he does that tomorrow, then Monday morning when I have that phone call with the mayor and myself will have a rating call on Monday. We can say, look, our 2014 budget's set and hopefully set, and then we can show that we have our fiscal house in order, because if they start seeing our house not in order, they're going to start saying, well, wait a minute, you've been through those Councilor Hass.
And wouldn't it raise a red flag if we were taking out, say, $1.6 million in stabilization for a rating company where we're not getting significant local aid cuts, where we're not getting, and I know the local aid budget.
In the past, and we've had rating increases because of our, like I say, in 2010, and I'm sorry, 2009 and 2011, actually every year we've gone into reserve.
Yeah.
But actual stabilization we've gone into on two separate occasions, and our bond rating has
Still late.
has actually got
Yeah.
better.
And I think one thing that I think about in the past, we've had a kind of a financial meltdown really in 2008, and that created a $3 billion, $3.5 billion budget deficit on the state level, and I know that that trickled down to state local.
Well, that did when they had 9C cuts. Okay, are you talking when they had the 9C cuts and
there were years between fiscal year 9, 10, 11 that the state was making 9C cuts, and there was a kind of a dire situation budget-wise, and I think as a state we've kind of gotten out of that, and we're kind of moving forward. We're in the governor has done a pretty good job of making sure that reserves are full, and the state is in pretty good fiscal health. So what my concern is that it's not raining on the state level. It's not really raining in yet here, and we don't. I think if everyone had if everybody had their druthers, they would not go into stabilization account. And I think nobody wants to go into it. And I think my job, I have felt as the chair of Ways and Means, and with the experience that I have looking at budgets, is there a way to keep services whole, not really affect the bottom line of the budget, but be able to keep us from going into the stabilization account or using reserves in any reserve, whether it be free cash or stabilization amount.
Well, I just basically wanted to say one thing, because I know George wanted, because we're kind of going back in history here to 2008 and the 9C3 cuts, and that was really devastating. I remember, and I know many of my colleagues here remember, sitting on the council and going through that, and then really, had it not been for many of the unions, if not all of the unions, foregoing pay raises that were promised to them through collective bargaining, I don't know how we would have made it through. So it was with the cooperation of our unions that really helped us bail out of that big mess that we had, because otherwise I'm not sure how we would have done it. And that was in addition to tapping into reserves. So, look, I think the one thing that we're going to be able to agree on is that none of us know what the future holds. We really don't. We can only do the best job that we can. And that's why, am I hanging the city's hopes on a casino? Of course not. But it's reality. We're talking about it. There's active conversation going on that by February of 2014, if things go the way that they could, Revere could be in a very, very different financial position than it is today. It could also be in the same position. So that's why, I'm looking at it as kind of a one-year fix right now to get us through into this next fiscal year. We'll have a lot better picture as to what's going on by next June when I'm standing in front of you.
I absolutely agree. Okay. So we need a roll call on the last item of the public.
98,000 on
after we vote on this public heat line item, I'll go over all the total cuts and then the additions. This is the last roll call, and additionally to the committee members, we have a communication from the mayor from June 18th that we should have taken up earlier, but it is to basically break out the engineering department, and there's a technical fix with the inspectional services department. So we'll take that up after we go over the cuts and go over this last roll call of the public building heat, which will be a savings of $30,000. Councilor Janino?
Yes.
Councilor Haas? Yes. Councilor Powers? Yes. And I will vote yes. With that, the total savings that we have come to as a recommendation of the committee, I will read them off individually. There's in the finance department, there's a workers' comp unemployment. The mayor's recommendation was $148,000. The recommendation of the council of the subcommittee is $60,000, which is a savings of $88,000. The next item is in the auditing department, and is the insurance. Description is insurance, and this is the mayor's recommendation was $690,000. The committee's recommendation is $600,000. That is a savings of $90,000. Next is in the DPW department. This is the streetlights line item, and that the mayor's recommendation was $684,000. The committee's recommendation is $600,000. That is a savings of $84,000. Next item is in the DPW public building heat. The mayor's recommendation was $110,000. The committee's recommendation is $80,000. That is a savings of $30,000. And the last two items are in the DPW rubbish collection, which is going from $2,127,980 to $2 million. That is a savings of $127,980. And rubbish disposal, which is going from $1.6 million to $1.5 million for a savings of $100,000. As I go through this list, I do realize that there are two stipends that are budgeted for that I don't know if we necessarily need, given that we are going to be approving a new detail clerk in the police department and an assistant director of IT for the police and fire. There's a detail officer stipend and an MIS director stipend. I know this was an issue that was brought up. I think Councilor Powers had brought it to my attention. At least the detail officer stipend.
Yeah.
I don't know if members want to touch it. It's only it'll be a total of $8,000, not a lot of money.
Mr. Chairman, I
Powers.
think I did bring that up, and I believe that the chief and the mayor said that that was contractual. So if it's contractual, and it really has to stay there, I would imagine.
That's understandable, and we'll keep that. We'll keep that. So the total amount of cuts we have are with the increases that Councilor Guanasso had offered up, total $507,000. And again, that was the goal of the chair, was to get to a point where, with the $500,000 that we could save, added to the $700,000 that we're going to get in the amount of the auctions that the Director of Finance has been able to hold, that we could, be able to keep from dipping into the stabilization account too much. With that, the last item that the committee has before we close our fiscal year 14 budget process is the communication from the mayor that had asked for a housekeeping item due to the engineering department and having to break out the engineering department into its own department. The chair doesn't see any issue with that. I'm going to ask that we take a vote on that. Councilor Janino.
Yes.
Councilor Hatz. Councilor Powers.
Yes.
And I vote yes. There are two other items in the inspectional services line item. One is an increase in the Department of Weights and Measures line item, specifically Robert Cronin's hours would be increased from 35 to 39 hours. And there is a change in a salary in the health division that it should be listed at $21,000, and it was listed at $41,000. So those two items I'm going to take up together, and I'll ask for a roll call. Councilor Janino.
Yes.
Councilor Hatz. Yes. Councilor Powers.
Yes.
And I vote yes. With that, I want to thank all the members who were willing to put in the long hours of having this budget process. Councilor Hatz, you look like you may have a comment.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that said, I want to publicly thank you and acknowledge the fact that you've done an excellent job as Chairman of Ways and Means for this year, and you are to be commended for that. And also the members of the committee and those who are not members of the committee who took the time out, such as, Councilor Penter and Councilor Correggio here tonight, and to participate in these budget hearings and help us come to a solution that I think serves the ratepayers in this city very well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. And I do want to thank all the members of the committee and the members of the council who did take the time, Councilor Penta especially, and Councilor Correggio, who have been able to make these meetings and have their input. I would be remiss if I didn't thank the Director of Finance, who has been very willing to work with me, and I've appreciated the working relationship that we've had in looking at budgets, and I know we have a lot of good conversations, and I enjoy having conversations with people who get budgets, and this is something that I enjoy. So I also want to thank the mayor, because I know that at the end of the day, there may be some disagreements about policy, but we do have the same, I think, vision for moving the city forward. As Councilor Janino alluded to, nobody wants to cut fire or police or cut services to seniors or to kids, and we all want to move the city forward. We just want to do it, and from my lens, my perspective, I want to do it to make the city a financially stable and create a city that people are going to want to invest in and feel confident in the finances are stable. So, Council Penta.
Council Powers actually cut me off. I actually want to echo him. I mean, I know the time and hours you put into this. I want to commend you for it. I do have a question, though, because Councilor Simbu had to leave to go somewhere. Are you going to take this up tomorrow night as a council as a whole, all cuts as one?
So my understanding is that the budget, the recommendation of the committee will be that of these cuts, and that will be the recommendation that's put before the committee.
The body. So it'll be one vote.
So it'd be one vote on the entire on the entire budget. What I will do, what I expect to do, is in my committee report, talk about some of the things that we've done out of committee, and we can discuss that, and then it'll be a decision, yes or no on the package as a whole as recommended by the committee.
Well, the real question I have is,
Yep.
and I understand, you're going to put all the cuts as one in front of the whole body. His question was, he's not on the committee, and he had to leave. He wants to make a cut, so does he make that cut tomorrow night? I mean, he's not on the committee. Every council has the right at a council meeting that's not here at the committee meeting to make their own cut.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would have been more than willing to take up his recommendation tonight if he wanted to.
It's a $40,000 cut, you told me, but I mean, I can leave it up to him to present it. I don't know how he could stop him from putting a cut in on his own.
If he wants to, and maybe the city clerk can clarify, but if he wants to further amend the recommendation of the chair, he could take a motion up on the floor at tomorrow night's meeting for that reduction.
You could do it.
Council has.
Any council has the opportunity, once you submit your report, to speak on the issue.
Yep.
If they want to make adjustments to it at that point in time, after you're done with presenting your budget, they can make adjustments.
Council, you're probably right, and basically, I mean, he can amend it.
Absolutely.
To put it as an amendment on the cuts.
Right.
All right, yeah.
All right, so, all right. Okay, I'll let him know that.
Thank you, Council Penta, and I want to thank again everybody, especially George and the mayor and all the members of the committee and all my colleagues for the help, and the council, yes, the city clerk. And with that, we will reconvene. Well, the committee of the whole will reconvene tomorrow night to vote on the budget. So thank you. We'll be adjourned. Thank you.